Mm-hmm.
Um, but I get what's going on.
See if you can use that at work too. Like implement some APIs or something.
Mm,
And then eventually, I want to maybe teach a class on like creating your own API that other people
okay.
can use, or maybe just in your company people can use. You know?
Mm. You think they'll ever teach like or do they teach like app development here?
Not really. No.
No. Okay. That's
They
fine.
might. That'd be cool.
I want to make my own like iOS app would be fun.
That would be cool. Actually, I really want to do that class.
Like Swift, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Swift like really seems like it's catching on.
Yeah.
Like it really seems funny.
It really does. Yeah. I would love to teach like an iOS Swift class. I mean, there was plans of talk about it, but
Mm-hmm.
no traction.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like it, because there was Objective C before.
Mm.
I kind of tried a little bit of it. I mean, just because it's programming this complicated. Um, I kind of gave up on it, and then I came back to Swift, and it kind of feels like if Objective C is JavaScript and Swift is jQuery type of thing.
Oh, like easier to use.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. Like almost the way it's written, I guess. It's like almost in English.
Wow.
Like it's really clever, I guess.
That's cool.
It's I guess I mean you're like super programmer or whatever, so you probably immediately understand it or whatever. But
That's rad.
yeah, I mean it's funny they do. Apple tends to do a lot of work for you, like in terms of like like I guess is it like autofill or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Like you start typing something and then you just hit enter and it'll just do it. Like if you want to make like a what is it like a table or whatever, you type in table whatever, start writing the function, and then it'll just write the function for you, and you just fill in whatever you want.
It's so surprising, like how well they've made things for developers. Like Apple is like very developer centric, but
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like when you look at an Apple, it looks
Well,
like it's not meant for develop. It looks like it's like made for your like grandpa because it's so simple, but it's like
well,
developer tools. You know?
well, you know why? Because the app stores they're really huge revenue for them. So they
Hmm.
gotta. I mean, like I think up to now, like they've got Google beat like really bad, like
Yeah.
in terms of how much money the app store makes.
Yeah.
I think like to date now they paid out $10 billion. No, 30 or 30 billion to developers,
Are you
and
serious?
then Google is like one
Wow.
billion. So they really haven't like it's just the app store is like they're genius with it. I
Wow.
think also too another thing too they're really good marketers.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, they have like a fan base.
like if you compare the two stores, like Google and the Google Play versus the App Store, like for example, Google Play looks really kind of just general, like it's just hey these are the top apps or whatever, and that's it. Like if you go to the App Store and you buy a new phone,
Mhm.
it's like hey these apps are for your new iPhone 6. These apps use iOS 9. These
Wow.
apps use this and that. So like imagine being a developer. It's like, oh, I know iOS 9 is coming out on this date, or the new iPhone is launching. What if it sells like 10 billion overnight? They sell
Wow.
like 10 billion new iPhones overnight.
10 billion?
Yeah,
Wait, what? That doesn't
yeah.
make any sense.
No, like the new ones, like pre-orders.
Wait, how can you send 10 billion? There's only 6
No,
billion people in the world.
sorry, million,
Million. Okay.
million. Yeah,
Okay.
I did the App
Okay.
Store sales.
Okay.
But yeah, they'll usually sell around 10 million of the new
Wow.
iPhones like pre-order time. So just imagine like if you make your app compatible with the new device, and that's like overnight market of 10 million people.
That's crazy.
So that's how I noticed it. Like, 'cause you get a new phone, what's the first thing you do? You go to the app store, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like advertisement for your app if you update it, and you know, like hey, it supports this feature that your phone has.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So they have banners like, hey, this supports 3D touch.
Yeah.
Here's all the
Wow.
apps. Um, any new feature the phone has, and if a developer updates for it, they'll get featured. So just imagine. I mean, I don't see Google
Yeah.
And then versus how Apple does it, I've noticed that they
That's a
do
really good analysis, dude. You should have like a podcast about all of
yeah, because like even now, like if I go onto their homepage,
it.
it's
Yeah.
like, hey, these are for these all these apps use screen touch, or even the metal rendering engine.
Yeah.
They had all this stuff when it came out, so it's like, hey, these are all apps that use this new rendering engine.
That's interesting.
So it's like the way they do their app store versus how Google does it. It's kind of like more incentive for the developer.
That makes sense.
Because I mean, like
Yeah.
imagine like
Well, I want to get back to the lecture now
yeah,
because
yeah,
I've been recording this whole time, so everyone's gonna hear this
yeah,
part, by the way. But yeah, let's get back to this after
yeah,
after the lecture's done.
yeah.
Okay, so right now I'm just gonna go over the array. So JavaScript array variables. Essentially, just an array is a place where you can store a list of different things. So up here we're just storing. Well, over here we have a string integer being stored into an array called array. Generally, you don't want to name an array. And it's as simple as just typing things in. So let's say I have two strings, one string, and then you just use comma, and now you have two elements. So two, or one string, second string. And now I have two elements in this string. Simple as that. Let's dive deeper into what arrays can do now too. So we've manually put the data into there. Let's see, word blanks. Okay. So you can actually nest an array within an array as well. So an array, again, is just a list, right, of different elements. And nesting arrays allows us to put an array within an array. And the reason we might want to do that is if you want like hierarchies in terms of structure. So in this case, they have an array as one element and another array as another element. And this is called a multidimensional array. So now they just want us to create another multidimensional array. So let's put an array as the first element, another array as the second element, and let's put first element, second element. Well, no, those are not good string names. I'll confuse. Stringy, string face, and potato. And let's just put integers in the second one, 23, 42, or 43. And now we have an array. So this array contains two elements. So it looks like it contains four elements, but there's actually only two elements in here. You notice that separation with the comma. So you have one element that is an array and another element that's also an array. And these arrays have elements within them. So let me just run these tests, make sure we did it right. Yep. So you're probably wondering, okay, so what can we do with it? How do we access the data inside the arrays? Well, we can access the data in the arrays using indexes. So indexing means that you start off with where something is using numbers. The numbers start off at 0. So let's say that you have an array and it has the integers 1, 2, and 3. So there's three elements in here, right? The first one is 1. The second one is integer 2. We could have changed this, though. We could have just made this like, 343. 342. So this is still the first element. This is the second element. This is the third element. But when you're indexing in terms of where the element is, the index is 0, index is 1, and index is 2. That's where the elements are. So in order to determine where the first element is, we can say, all right, so it says create a variable. It says my data. So create a variable called my data. Set it to equal the first value of my array. So my array, the first element, what is the index of the first element in any array?
0.
0, correct. So then this will give us 1. All right, so unlike strings, the entries of arrays are mutable and can be changed freely. So arrays actually can be changed. So let's say that you want to change the second element inside this array. What's the index of the second element in here? 1, correct. So the integer 2 is at index of 1. So I'm going to change these like 34. So it has no reference to the position, right? These are all just different elements. So this is still at index 0, this is at index 1, this is at index 2. So I don't like that they did this because I think that confuses people. So these are just random numbers, right? One index of 0, index of 1, index of 2. And we're able to change inside the array the position, or sorry, not just the position, but the elements themselves. So it says modify the data stored at index 0, so at index 0, to a value of 3. So this should equal 3. And that's it. So we just said, okay, change the first element, which is 234,234, and let's just make that 3. Oh, so they wanted to keep the numbers the same, so let's just make it 1. I don't like the original numbers that they started off with, though, so I changed those. So a multidimensional array, again, is just an array filled with arrays. So how they visualize it is that if you made the array look like this, it starts to look like a table, right? You have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, 4 rows, and each row has columns. So this is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 columns in here with 4 different rows. So that's the same way how you access the data inside this element. So let's say that you want to access this number 8. Can you tell me how I would access this number 8 into a variable? So, so the first one would be 2. Correct. So what happens is you're saying, okay, in my array, give me the 1, 2, sorry, 0, 1, 2. So the third element, and inside this element, give me the index of 1. So 0, 1. So 8. So you use the second one again. So now you have the number 8 being stored into my data. Excellent. Push function. Okay. So an easy way to append data to the end of an array is via the push function. So push takes one or more parameters and pushes it to the end of the array. So it's actually really easy. If you wanted to add a new element to an array, you just use push function. So let's say that you want to push, oh, in this case, we're pushing a whole array. So you can just do myArray, and you do dot push, and you can put whatever you want in here to add it to the end of this myArray. So if you want to push another array in there, we can push this array. And they're saying push an array that contains 2 elements, dog and 3. And we're pushing it to the end of that array. Pushing, again, just means adding it to the end of the array. Okay, another method that you can use with arrays is called pop. Pop, what it does is remove the last element from the array. If it removes the last element, you can actually store that last element that you removed from the array inside a variable. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to remove the last item from my array. So my array dot pop, and we're going to assign it to remove from array. So this is all you have to do. You say my array dot pop. So now you took this last element, cat and 2, and now this my array is only consisting of one element inside, which is this array that contains John and 23. And the last element that you removed is now stored inside this variable called remove from my array. Simple as that. All right, manipulate arrays with shift. So pop always removes the last element in an array. What if you want to remove the first element in an array, right? So that's what shift does. So shift removes the first element from an array. So let's say that you want the first element removed from the array. So my array dot shift, and you just store that shifted variable, or sorry, that shifted element inside this variable. So what will happen is this array with John and 23 will now be saved into remove from array, and this my array will then become just dog and 3. So it just has one element inside. All right, manipulate arrays with unshift. Okay. So not only can you shift elements off the beginning of the array, you can also unshift elements at the beginning of the array. That means you can add elements to the beginning of the array. They have weird names for all these things: unshift, shift, pop, and push. So pop and push are for removing elements from the end of the array, and push is for adding elements to the end of the array. Shift is for removing elements from the beginning of the array, and unshift is for adding elements to the beginning of the array. You don't have to memorize these; just use them, and eventually you'll start remembering them. Okay, so now we're gonna add Paul35 to the beginning of my array. Dot unshift. So they want us to add this new one. It says Paul and 35. And that's it. Now it's added. So again, same concept, last 4 different modules that we went over. Very similar. Alright, so now we're going to try to create a shopping list in the variable called myList. The list should be a multi-dimensional array containing several sub-arrays. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to wait for you guys to do this for me, because this is going to be a challenge. Using the knowledge that you know. Oh, actually, I've been doing all this work when I don't think I'm going to upload this video. Crud. I just realized that I'm doing people's work for them. So instead of doing the work, I'm just going to explain it. Darn. I didn't even realize that. I was like, oh, hey. Yeah, these are all the answers. All right, so in JavaScript, we can divide up our code into reusable parts called functions. So this function is used in such a way where it acts as a wrapper for whatever code you want. So let's say that you had some code that says, hey, world, and you want to run that, but you don't want this to run automatically. So you wrap it in a wrapper function, which is just using this function keyword along with the name of the function and these parentheses. Notice there's nothing in these parentheses, and that's just because it's a wrapper function. So now to make this console.log run, you'd actually have to call the whole function. The function name is reusable function, and then it will run. So I'm not going to give any more away. But basically, this is called a function call, and this is the function definition. The function definition is you defining what the function is, so writing up the function. And when you want to use the function, then you use this function call over here. All right. Let's see, how many more do we have? So we're about a quarter of the way through it. All right, passing values to functions with arguments. So let's say that you have a function called function with arguments. So this is another way to use a function. There's only 2 ways to use a function. Again, the first one was if you want to use it as a wrapper, meaning that if you want to wrap your code around a function so that it doesn't run automatically, it only runs when the function is called. Another way to use it is if you want some data to be processed inside the function, and then you want the data to then be outputted. So this is an input-output function. In this case, It does have parameters. Parameters are just placeholders. These placeholders are used inside your function, and these get replaced by whatever arguments you pass them. So before we had a function call where it didn't have anything in there. But now when you call this function, you pass it these arguments. And these arguments replace these parameters. So now we have 10 and 5 replacing A and B, and A and B over here gets replaced by 10 and 5. So what do you think this console.log will give you at the end if you call this function the way it is now?
Wait.
What will be in the console.log?
I see. It's
Mm-hmm. So what will console.log print out? Take your time.
hold on. Which one are you on? What's it called?
This one is passing values to functions with arguments.
Oh, so it'll be 5.
Yes, correct. It will be 5 because this 10 gets passed into here, and this 5 gets passed into here. And this represents A, this represents B. So 10 is now A, 5 is now B. So then 10 and 5. So then console.log will print out 10 minus 5, which is 5. Muy excelente. Oh, and you got me, churros. You. I like you right now. Totally worth the long nights. I don't even care if you lace this with poison either. Okay. Okay. Global scope and functions. Probably something you want to pay attention to. Yep. In JavaScript, scope refers to the visibility of variables. This is going to talk about a lot of stuff. Basically, if a variable is here outside of a function, it is global. It can be used throughout the entire script. If it's inside of a function, it is only local. It can only be used within that function, unless that yeah, exactly. Unless you return that that variable, and then it comes out of that function, and then it's global. Okay. So again, that just means if a variable is here, then it's global. If it's inside something like this, then it's local. It can only be used within this function. This variable can actually be used inside the function as well. So if I did, I'm a var, this refers to this variable up here. Okay? So I can use this variable because I already declared it up here. And this refers to this variable. And this is used often, yes.
So that global variable,
Mm-hmm.
is it only local to that file, or can you use it from
Good,
another file?
good question. So is that global variable local only to that file, or can I use it across files? If you import the file into your JavaScript file, then it's global. Otherwise, a JavaScript file trying to access a variable that doesn't have access to, I mean, it doesn't exist to it, right? Yeah. So it actually is pretty simple. It's just like understanding how to use it is a little tricky. And a common way of using it is a counter. So let's say that you have a counter, right? And the function you do every time the function runs. So you don't want this counter to be inside this function, right? You don't want this, sorry, you don't want to declare this inside the function because it will just keep resetting every time the function runs. So you want this counter to be outside. And then this just increments this.
The global.
The global variable, correct. And then?
you can still call it without returning because it's not inside the function. It's
Right.
outside.
Right. It's just using the function inside, but it was declared outside the function, so it's global.
So that function is just you modifying the global variable.
Right. Okay. So now, okay. I was really hungry. No, this is good. Now we're square. Okay. So variables which are declared within a function, as well as the function parameters, have local scope. So again, we just went over this. A variable inside this function is local. It does not exist outside that function unless it is returned. Five-second rule. And we already went over returning a value from a function with the return, but let's go over that for everyone else's sake. So when using a function, when you want to have an output return back to it, use this keyword called return. Now what return does is it returns one value back to the function itself. So let's say we have this function called -7. And it has this parameter called num. And it returns num -7. So if we do this, and we call this function, we say -7, and we send it, I don't know, 10. What do you think console.log is going to have? It's okay, take your time. Mm-hmm. Hmm? It'll be 3. Now the reason it's 3 is because we're returning this back to the function. So the result is what gets printed in here, which then gets printed back to console.log. Excellent. All right, assignment with a return value. So if you want to save that value and not just print it out, what you can do is save that return value into a variable. Whenever you need to save something, you save it into a variable. So what they've done is say you have this variable called changed, and it starts off being equal to 0. Then they have this function definition called change, not to be confused with changed. This is the different variable. This is a function, and this takes in a parameter called num. Now, what gets returned is num plus 5 divided by 3. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to change this, okay. Change num, and that way they look a lot different. So change num is a variable that's now going to store the return value from calling the function called change 10. So what do you think change num is going to contain? Which is? Hmm? Mm-hmm. Yep, 5, exactly. It's okay. I feel you. Alright, so it's 5. Because 10 gets sent into here, which then gets replaced here. So then it's 10 plus 5, which is 15, divided by 3, which is 5. That 5 then gets returned back to the function. So it gets returned here. And now this 5 is then, using the assignment operator, saved into change num, this variable. And that's the operating procedure, or the order of operations. Stand in line is going to be another assignment that I want you guys to complete on your own, based on what you guys learned up here. Mm-hmm. Alright, this is going to be the easiest one. Boolean values. Boolean is actually a data type, and it's the easiest data type, because it can only mean one of two things. A Boolean can either be true or false, and that's it. So if you see the keywords true or false, and they're not in string, they're referring to Boolean values. So false is a Boolean value, and true is a Boolean value. So again, strings, true and false, are not Boolean. They're just strings that have characters inside them. But if they don't have strings around them and it says true or false, these are Boolean values. And that's it. This is good food. Okay. Using conditional logic with if statements. So, you can write an entire program using if statements. Very important. An if statement is as follows. If this condition is true, run the following code. And that's all. So, if something is true or false, we already learned about Boolean values, right? Now what happens is here, you can put something, right? You can say, hey, if something in here goes in, and you replace it here, by default, if you put something in here and you don't say equals to true, it'll automatically assume, oh, you want to check if that item is true. So, oh crap. So if you pass in 33 greater than 42 to true or false, well, this is another function. Let's pass it to our function that we already created. So if we did this, this is going to get passed into here, which then gets passed here. Now it's going to say if 33 is greater than 42 is true, then do this. Is 33 greater than 42? Nope. So it's going to return no, it's false. Now this is without using an else statement. So far we're just using if statements. So I'm having my feast. And you're going to have to watch me. Is that okay? Okay. Do you want some? Alright. The next several statements are actually going to be even easier. There are a ton of comparison operators. So far we used the assignment operator, which has a single equal sign. But that's a lot different than the comparison operator, which checks to see if two elements are equal. So, if value is equal to some other value, let's say 10, then return equal. That means if val, when you pass in 10, is equal to 10, it's going to return equal. In this case, this is going to be true. It's going to actually return equal because we're passing in 10, which then replaces val over here. So it's going to say if 10 is equal to, so this is, again, not assignment operator. Assignment operator is a single equal sign. That's assigning the right-hand value into the left-hand value. This is the equality operator. This checks, hey, is whatever's on the right side equal to one on the left? If it is, then return true. If false, then it's going to return false. Does that make sense? Okay. How far did you get? Did you get to this part? I think we passed that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's good. So the strict equality operator, I don't want you guys to worry about too much. It's basically the same thing as the regular equality operator, except it checks the data type and the value of the compared elements. So I don't want you guys to worry too much about that right now. That's more for advanced stuff. The what? Oh, the little blurbs that they say? Yeah. This is all community based too. Alright, the inequality operator is the opposite of the equality operator. Inequality just says, hey, if it's not equal to this, so if val is not equal to 10, then return not equal. What do you think that this will actually return? It's going to return equal, right? even though that doesn't make any sense because value is not equal to 10. Well, the value that we're passing in is 10, so it's going to return false. Yeah, exactly. I hope everyone can hear my chewing. That's what you guys get for not coming. Edgar got to use an API. Okay. Next is the greater than operator, and I'm going to go through greater than, less than on one go. So these are another set of comparison operators, and what they do is they say, hey, greater than is going to say if something, or you're going to use it in general with if statements. So when you use greater than, less than, you can only use it with numbers. Because it wouldn't make sense to say, is this, array greater than this other array, unless you're using length of array. Now you can actually use ASCII stuff, but you don't have to worry about that right now. Um, yeah, it would take the first letter in a string and say it is greater in the ASCII scale. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can use that in those cases if you're trying to do alphabetization, especially with search algorithms. But you guys don't have to worry about that right now. For right now, in our cases, we're going to mostly use it with numbers. So if val is greater than 10, or let's just put like 15, then return over 100. And put if val is less than 15, put return over 10. So what do you think is going to get returned with this function? Over 10, yeah. Even though it's 10, that's just a string that we're returning, right? I could have said anything. Yeah. So I can even make this better. So this one probably makes sense, right? So now it matches the return statement. So now if a value gets passed, so right now we're passing in 10, right? We could have passed in whatever we wanted. That gets this replaced. Then that replaces this val. So then it checks here. It says, is 10, if 10 is greater than 100, is 10 greater than 100? Last time I checked, 10 is not greater than 100. So this doesn't run. How about this one? Is 10 greater than 10? Then we're going to return 10 or under. So it's really powerful stuff. And the same can be done for less than, greater than. You can also do less than or equal to. Oh, sorry, that's greater than or equal to, less than, and less than equal to. Same thing, same exact thing. I don't know why they have 4 different modules to explain these concepts. Did the exact same things, just used in different ways. That's true. Repetition does work. Okay, what else are we doing? Alright, we're almost done. 2 more modules. So we have the logical AND operator and the logical OR operator. Not loading? It's taking a long time. Really? Hmm. Huh. It's okay. I can explain the concepts by hand. Hmm. That is good food. Thank you, Scott. You are in my good graces. Okay. It's working for you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now it's working. Weird.
So many people trying to learn.
I guess so. Okay. Come on. Alright. So, if you want to check if more than one element is true or false, then you can use the AND operator. So what that does is, let's say that you have. So if you want to use the AND operator, what it does is it says if both elements are true. So if val is, I don't know, greater than 30 and val is less than 100, then return we're all good. Okay, so if val is equal to 10, what is going to get returned here?
No.
Exactly. But if val was equal to 31,
And
we're all good. Excellent.
it's a way to check for ranges.
Yeah, this is the range check. And you could do it, you could do other stuff too. You said, like, if it's not equal to these things, so if val is not equal to bad word 1 and val is not equal to, bad word 2. Now we can replace these with pretend bad words like fanny and buttocks. I say we're all good. Cool? Now the OR operator is actually the opposite. It says if any one of these, so it's double pipes, you can find that in the backslash key. If you hit shift and then backslash twice, you get these double pipes. So what you could say is if val is equal to, I don't know, 20, or val is equal to, let's say, like making a bingo game or something, it could be any one of these numbers. So it could be 20 or 40. We're all good. Or, you could have a whole bunch of things. So you could say val is equal to string, sushi, or Chinese food. So yeah, I'm done.